Why do you smell, Jen?
Because I'm sweating so much in here. I can't open my windows because of the chaos around my apartment. So I already told you we have new next door neighbors. They're partiers. They start first thing in the morning. And then there's the usual beach chaos. So I'm getting a little tired of living in Disneyland, and it's making me stink because I have to sit here and sweat for 3 hours in order to talk to you.
Well, I'm glad.
This is what people don't realize. This is what people don't realize about the sacrifices podcasters make. I can't run the air conditioning for sound quality reasons. And so for like an hour, I'm going to have to be hot. It's basically like being one of the troops, you know.
It's essentially valor. We should be issued medals by the American government to demonstrate the sacrifice that we put forth. The dulcet tones that you hear is our guest today filling in for Andrew Heaton, who, I shit you not, is literally, as we record this, at the ABBA Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. And that is Jeremiah Johnson. Welcome to the show, friend.
I'm glad to be filling in here for Andrew Heaton, who is given the convenient excuse of running off to Sweden when we all know that he's really just going to be named in the Epstein files. And he's just trying to get away as fast as he possibly can.
As fast as he can.
He's going to be gone forever now. So, you know, RIP to a real one.
Well, we welcome you to the show. How well do you know Mr. Heaton?
I know him well enough, I would say. You know, you don't want to get too close to the guy. He's he's shifty. He's dangerous. Mm-hmm. You can't quite get a beat on him, you know. So, no, I've been friends with Andrew for a number of years.
Oh, good. Because I didn't know that you guys had a pre-existing relationship. I had told Heaton months ago that if he wanted to miss a show, he needed to find a replacement. And then I see two things in quick successive order: you on Andrew Heaton's show, and then an email saying, here's my replacement, which led me to believe that Mr. Heaton, who is not necessarily a legendary forward planner, he can be a bit of a last minute guy, just panicked and asked the host or the guest on his show, hey, can you please do my job on We're Not Wrong?
Who's the most recent person I've talked to, and can they do my job? This is kind of the Donald Trump style of politics. Just exactly. The most recent guy that I've talked to is now what I think. You know, it's one way to do things.
Jeremiah, I don't know anything about you. What is your podcast?
My podcast is the New Liberal Podcast. I write a Substack called Infinite Scroll, and I host the New Liberal Podcast, which is part of the Center for New Liberalism. It's an organization I founded about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's basically trying to make the Democratic Party a better party, a more sane and moderate party dedicated to liberal ideas. So that's my backstory.
Okay, that's a tough hill to climb. Good luck with that.
God bless you.
Yeah, I appreciate your efforts.
How do you think it's going so far?
I mean, we've had some real successes in an age in which like liberalism is going backwards. But part of that has meant that there's kind of a rally around the flag of people who still do think like, hey, like liberal ideas are still worth something, still worth talking about and defending. So in an age in which like we are very much not the hot trend in politics, in an age in which like skepticism of foreign trade and skepticism of immigration and, you know, backsliding of democratic norms, like small d democratic, all of that is happening. We are trying to kind of build a future after Donald Trump where those things will still matter.
Yeah, I love that.
And do you think that's the home of that is still the Democratic Party?
It sure ain't the Republicans.
Yeah, it's the question of, you know, how many choices do you have? Because
sure, it is kind of a binary when it comes to our coalitions.
Well, and the thing about the right and the left, at least in modern politics, the left is ideological, so you can at least make an ideological argument to them. The right is not ideological; they are just tribal. They follow a tribe, they follow a leader. You know, they don't have ideas so much as they have loyalty to a select group of people. You know, Donald Trump is at the top of that, but they will switch their ideas at the drop of a hat based on what one guy says, which means that, you know, if you have an actual idea about how you think the world should be, that's not a place where you're going to get to build it unless you are the guy at the very top.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Let's take a beat real quick and ask this question. Is Andrew Heaton a virulent racist? Because this is something, Jeremiah, that we're going to have to clean up here before we get to our business of the day. Heaton made mention during our show last week discussing 80s icons that died, that on the Cosby Show, there was a daughter that was written off who walked up the stairs and was never spoken of again. I was informed that there is a bit of a question of whether or not he is right here. Number one, there was a child daughter that was written out of a beloved Black sitcom. Unfortunately, it was Family Matters and not The Cosby Show. However, there was a daughter that was written out of The Cosby Show, but not a child daughter. That was Lisa Bonet on The Cosby Show, but she was, an adult who was on a spinoff show. So it was a little bit more normal. So Jeremiah, I'm going to ask you this, filling in for Andrew Heaton, is he racist for confusing Family Matters and The Cosby Show?
My controversial answer is that he's not racist, but the obsession with, young girls in Hollywood. Again, I think that he might be in the Epstein files. I think this might be, there's a pattern here, and that's the part I find suspicious. I don't think he sees race, but I think he definitely sees women, so.
Yeah, when Judy Winslow went upstairs to never be seen again, she went up to see Andrew Heaton. That's the secret.
Straight to the island.
Yep. Bye, Judy.
Jeremiah, where are you from? Because we do an intro where I say locations.
I am based out of New York. And how about you guys?
New York. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll find out right now. From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young from Southern California.
I'm Jennifer Briney.
And joining us from New York,
I am Jeremiah Johnson.
He didn't even need any coaching, which I probably should have told you about. But we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we will discuss President Bill Clinton being subpoenaed over the Epstein situation, as well as Donald Trump firing the Bureau of Labor Statistics secretary, all that, plus your emails. Probably should have told you that there was a bit. We've just been doing this show for so long that I think sometimes it's hard to forget that this isn't like we have a little choreographed bit up top.
It's not that clever of a bit. I think he caught on pretty quick.
He did. No, I'm glad. I'm glad. But you just want to be nice to the guest. You want to lay things out.
The next bit is obviously that we're talking about the Clintons and emails. And that, I'm transported all the way back to 2016. So thematically appropriate.
They say that nostalgia moves in decades. So now Clinton's emails back, right? I on the waterfall video apps, and there are so many of them, TikTok probably being the biggest, a thing that I continually see because I like politics, but I also like absurdist humor, are these compilations that are put to songs of random political figures. It is one of my favorite things, but I've seen ones of Dwight Eisenhower, Muammar Gaddafi, George W. Bush pops up a lot, but it's, I feel like Bill might be too on the nose, but I don't know whether or not Bill nostalgia for the Gen Z Bill nostalgia has not bubbled into my radar just yet.
We'll wait until they see the videos of him with the saxophone, because I think that's what did it for us back
Or maybe
then.
Hillary, ironic Hillary fandom. Maybe that's coming for the Gen Z or the Gen Alpha.
Bringing pantsuits back.
Yeah. I mean, she is an icon. She is very, very identifiable by her own look, right? She had an identifiable look. That's really all you need for people to put a Iconopop song over, your bunch of video clips moving by ever so fast.
True. She's just been in the spotlight for so long. Like, I can't remember a time in my life where Hillary wasn't buzzing around.
Is she still
somewhere.
in the spotlight? I kind of feel like she's receded.
She's our main topic today.
Well, today, but that's because there's news about her. There hasn't been news. I don't know. Jeremiah, has Hillary receded from the stage?
I mean, she obviously has, but to me, it's like the thing that's interesting about this Epstein thing right now, and they're pulling in the Clintons. It's very much like the GOP trying to let's play the hits, like the new stuff. We're the Rolling Stones in the 90s, and the new stuff is like weird and nobody cares about it. And so we just got to go back to playing the hit. Like it's the dog that's gnawed the bone so much that it's barely even there anymore. If I can do mixed metaphors here, it's very reminiscent of 1997 to try to draw Bill and Hillary Clinton into a scandal as though that's what the people are asking for. The people are demanding accountability from the Clintons again somehow. It really feels like they're grasping,
Let's get into the details on that. Bill and Hillary Clinton, along with 8 other individuals, have been subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee to testify in the congressional investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The committee is seeking information about Epstein's history and the handling of his case by the Department of Justice across multiple administrations. The subpoenas include former attorneys general, FBI directors, and the Department of Justice itself, with depositions scheduled to begin this month. So, Jeremiah, let me go back to you. The public demand for information on Epstein at this point has certainly been bipartisan and undeniable. The Clintons are now again enveloped in it. Is there anything that will satiate this nation's unquenched lust for Epstein information and justice?
I think the answer is pretty clearly no. Nothing will.
We're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives, just talking about Jeffrey Epstein.
There's 2 reasons why, or really just one reason, but there's this meta thought I have about it. The first thing to note is that there's not going to be a bombshell list. There are Epstein files. There's all sorts of files that people can talk about. There's plain logs. There's, interviews and depositions. And, he pled out under Acosta, who Trump actually appointed that guy to a position.
This was
in his first administration.
In 2008 in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of files, but people are like, who's on the list? There is a notarized list somewhere of I am Jeffrey Epstein, and I made a single file Excel sheet of every pedophile that I ever interacted with. And obviously that doesn't exist. You're not going to get a neat list that says, here's the secret proof of 13 pedophiles and they're all billionaires and we've just been hiding it from you. It's possible that some billionaires or Bill Clinton or Donald Trump were having sex with underage girls there, but you're not going to get, barring some amazing revelation, you're not going to get actual proof of that. You're just going to get all these hearsay kind of stuff about who flew on what plane. And that stuff is, it is what it is. Stephen Hawking went to Epstein's Island. I don't think anybody thinks that he was getting freaky with underage girls.
Speak for yourself.
But I mean, to me, the more interesting thing is how, the Republican Party has kind of cultivated a very conspiratorial base, right? They are obsessed with conspiracy theories. QAnon is part of what catapulted Trump to the presidency in the first place. And MAGA world has always been extremely conspiracy friendly, always lined up against the deep state, and experts are lying to you. The elites are lying to you. And I think that this is now coming around to bite them because Trump can do a lot. Trump can back off on immigration topics or trade topics or spending this, taxing that. And his base doesn't really care because that's not what they're there for. But when he tries to get them to stop paying attention to the Epstein stuff, that is the base. The conspiratorial right is the base. And that's where he's actually losing people, is that he wants everybody to stop paying attention to the Epstein files. And that's very interesting to me.
Jen, will we continue no matter who we bring in and who talks, or is Subpoena just forever be talking about old Jeffy E?
I think we might, mainly because the person at the center of this is dead. And so we can't get the actual answers from the man. And if so, in the vacuum, all kinds of stuff can be filled in. And it's such a juicy story because you've got the child sex crimes and the trafficking. And then you also have the intelligence connections. There's just so much there. And so when I'm looking at this, like, I obviously look at it from a congressional lens, that now we have this investigation coming in this particular committee. Let's remind everyone that the House Oversight Committee used to be my favorite. When the Democrats had control of it, they had excellent investigations into consumer safety and all kinds of stuff. I covered a bunch of their investigations on my show. And then James Comer took it over and turned it into a partisan witch hunt machine. He's desperate to be one of the big names in politics and yet just can't get there. And so even though Speaker Mike Johnson made the House go home early to avoid taking a vote on the Epstein files, a week later, James Comer is like, I'm subpoenaing everyone.
Yeah.
Because just including to give people...
including the Department of Justice. I mean, the Clintons are the bold-faced name here because they are the red meat for the conservative base. But this is also subpoenaing people inside Trump's own administration.
Oh, yeah. So
They haven't subpoenaed Donald Trump, though. Notably, who
I know
it's been confirmed by independent reporting that his names are all over these files.
Of course it does.
Yeah. I mean, but that's should not. There's so much of this story that is literally going to give me a fucking stroke, because if you've paid attention to this for any length of time, people just start repeating shit that was well known and documented 15 years ago as if it's breaking news. And I'm like, I swear this is going to be the thing that breaks me, is that people just new people come in and they see the story and then they're like, do you know that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends? It's like, yeah, we fucking know. We've known this shit for fucking ever.
But isn't it fascinating that so many people didn't? Like the people that were watching Fox News, some of them genuinely didn't. I've talked to people who are surprised by this. And I think it just kind of shows that as online as we are, we're aware of this stuff, but there's people that just don't know until the story hits a certain level of big. Yeah. And so
it has been that level of big lately. It's funny. The White House rushed their entire, a term's worth of legislative priorities in one bill that they got done in record time. And now you have to wonder whether or not they really kind of wish that they had strung that one out a little bit, so there was fucking anything else that they were trying to put a lot of heat on to talk about, because they have struggled, to Jeremiah's point, to find anything else that can compete with the insatiable desire for Epstein information.
Well, that competition is coming, because in September, we are going to have another government funding crisis. They've finished one out of the 12 government funding bills. This is going to happen. So actual government is going to take over again.
Yeah, let's get to that in a second. Let's get through whatever we're going to get through on this Epstein thing. Bill and Hillary Clinton being subpoenaed. What do you think happens?
I mean, we'll just as the host of Congressional Dish, I'm excited because I think I'm going to get some really good testimony that is not important at all, but is going to be low hanging fruit for an episode. I think it's just James Comer wants to be in the center of the circus, and he has just ensured that no matter what happens, whether they ignore the subpoena or whether they show up, his committee is the center of the circus. So he's going to get the attention that he wants. I don't know if we're going to learn anything about it. I mean, maybe if the people on that committee, and there are a few firecrackers on it, if they are smart enough to go down the route of what were the intelligence connections and go that route instead of the sex trafficking route, we might hear some really interesting things. I don't know if they're going to do that. So, but there's going to be a circus and I'll be watching. So, it'll at least be entertaining.
Have you been reading Michael Tracy on this?
No.
You should read Michael Tracy on it.
I've been reading The Big Beautiful Bill for a month.
I've been Michael Tracy pilled on this story because he's done a lot of like just going back to the original facts, and he's
What's
reviewed
his
a lot of
take?
the documents from the initial investigation that Jeremiah mentioned that was led by Alex Acosta. And like, it seems pretty black and white to me that like a lot of the mythology that is built up around Jeffrey Epstein, that like he got a sweetheart deal during that first investigation, just plainly isn't fucking true. Like, the reason why they pled him out was because the victims that they were going to testify were unreliable and were saying that on the stand, they were going to say that Jeffrey didn't do anything wrong and they loved him. So without having the ability to actually prosecute him, to have the victims say that they were victims, they decided, okay, we're going to go for a plea deal and we're going to be hard asses on one thing. And they had to choose what one thing it was going to be. And that was get him on the sex offender registry list. And his lawyers were, fought hard against it, but they stood up and said, look, we're going to do it. The whole intelligence thing, there's a lot of debate on whether or not that's even real, that like intelligence told them not to do it, that the far more Occam's razor solution as to why he got the deal he got was because the victim said that they loved him and that he didn't do anything wrong, which makes a lot of sense when you think about actually trying to prosecute somebody. It just isn't, to Jeremiah's point, this crazy fucking conspiracy that can go anywhere from Mossad honeypots to eyes wide shut child sex trafficking amongst the nation's pedophilic elite. It just is a rich creep in Palm Beach.
One thing that's really interesting to me about this is, like, again, I don't discount the idea that like Epstein was having sex with underage girls, right? And maybe he was inviting other.
That is something he has been convicted of and proven of in court.
Yeah,
that did.
Well, and that he was, that bringing other elite people, whether it's politicians or billionaires or whoever, to do the same thing on his island, maybe. But like, there's a scene in The Wire where, like, I think it's Stringer Bell was like, they're talking about how they're going to be pushing their product all over Baltimore. And there's some guy like writing in a notebook and he snatches it up and he says, "Are you taking notes on a criminal fucking conspiracy?" And like burns it, throws it in the trash. And that's what I'm like, do people expect that there's just some notarized thing of like, here is, every billionaire that put his thing inside of a teenage girl? Like, obviously you don't keep notes. Like, you can look at who's on the records, but the nature of this thing is going to always spiral out into conspiracy and just we're daydreaming whatever we want to daydream about, because you're never going to get a final resolution here.
I mean, the thing that he was convicted for was that him and Ghislaine Maxwell are pedophiles that recruited underage girls for their own sexual exploits. That is what has been convicted. The leap that happens is that they then did that with other famous people, which is a thin membrane because Jeffrey Epstein knew fucking everybody. Ghislaine Maxwell knew everybody. They were big philanthropists. They gave a lot of money to people. They were, the kind of seen and be seen types. And then the step beyond that is that he was actually some kind of pimp, and that the secret, disgusting desires of international elite could only be satiated by this one vendor of underage flesh. And that's why the list matters. But it's like, you don't realize, we just talk about it so casually, that it's like, there's a lot of leaps there. There's a lot of like, okay, maybe we have no evidence to suggest that the other two levels are true.
The reason those leaps happen is because this is the base that he's recruited. Like, you go all the way back to QAnon and Comet Ping Pong and, the basement of the pizza parlor and the Clintons, and like QAnon, there's something very core to the worldview of like right-wing conspiracists about like protecting children. So much of right-wing politics falls into the paradigm of protecting children. It's being obsessed with like pedophilic elites, It's a lot of the stuff that you see around trans politics.
Abortion.
It's like abortion, education policy, so much, banning books from public libraries. So much of it is, the protect the children shit. And that is why, like, this is not going to go away, because like there's this thing in politics where you can only really be canceled by your own side. It doesn't matter if progressives are mad at Ben Shapiro, and it doesn't matter if Fox News is mad at Obama, but it very much matters if Fox News is mad at Ben Shapiro or whatever. And like his base is all about this pedophilic elite protect the children stuff. And so when Donald Trump is, refusing to talk about it, when he's like indicating that maybe he's going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, like that's why this is not going to stop being a topic, because it can't be. It's the core of what his base believes.
Well, and to defend the conspiracy theorists here for a second, I don't think that the leap is all that far, because like Prince Andrew was accused by one of the victims of like actually doing this to her. And he's a pretty high up guy. When we look at Bill Clinton, who's hanging out with this guy going on his plane, Bill Clinton in the 1990s was like the scandal of the 90s was he was getting blown by the interns under the White House desk. And then you have Donald Trump, who's buying teenage beauty pageants and bringing Jeffrey Epstein there. So it's like, I don't think the leap is that far. And I think that's why people are demanding the list, because like the suspects we already have, we're kind of like, yeah, I see it.
I will say that there is, and this is where it gets into dangerous territory, that there is a line between smearing somebody as a pedophile and not, right? Like that is among culturally the most vile things that can be said about somebody. It is a reputationally destroying charge, which is, I think, why this is fascinating to so many. And I get your point, Jeremiah, about certainly the fever pit of conspiracy from the right is rich and has a rich history that kind of I think is fed by the idea that they have believed until they built their own ecosystem that they were being fed information that had a left-leaning beat to it. And so there has to be a story beyond it that they are covering up, and that has metamorphosized in different ways. And then the internet supercharges it. I do think that it's something that is leaking into the left. Are you familiar with Something's Wrong 2024, the Reddit community?
No.
Jeremiah, nothing?
No.
It is, I think, now bigger than the 8chan board that QAnon was based on, but they are of the hardcore belief that the 2024 election was stolen by Elon Musk and for Kamala, or against Kamala. Kamala Harris is the duly elected president of the United States, and that Elon Musk used Starlink to adjust the totals.
Now that you've said it, I actually have spent a little bit of time in that subreddit. I for some reason I thought the name was something else, but yeah, there's the
Blue Anon is real.
Yeah.
Like Blue Anon is a real thing that I do think, especially in a very wide open primary, both for the midterms and for the general, will be heard on some level. There will be questions.
Well, it started in
about
2016. It's gotten worse, but it started in 2016.
2016? Get out of here. 2000 and well, I mean, like 1960, really, if you want to talk about the mass media age in terms of conspiracies about stolen elections. But 2004, there was the Diebold Ohio machine stuff. Obviously, 2000 is rife with conspiracy on stealing the election. But yeah, no, it's been a part. If anything, it was an aberration that Republicans were complaining about a stolen election in 2020. It's usually been a liberal complaint.
It's not good for our country. That's for sure, that people have these level of questions and they can't be immediately swatted down. It's a concern.
Yeah, but also it's the internet, man. Like people are going to find some shit to talk about. I don't know. I don't know exactly how much of it is a sign of, the rot of the republic per se.
I mean, we can dismiss it right up until the point you have a bunch of bumpkins storming the Capitol. I mean, there are consequences to this shit.
Yeah, and I think it's a little like misguided to kind of be like, well, this is something that both parties do when, like for me, it's impossible to imagine somebody running, a Democrat running in 2028 saying, like Pete Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom or somebody saying, actually, Kamala Harris won that election. This is my stance. I think Donald Trump has been illegitimate the last 4 years. Like, nobody will do that. No, no major Democrat will do that. But like Donald Trump thinks that the Democrats cheated in all 3 of his elections. He said they cheated in 2016 and that he just won anyway. He still thought there was, tens of millions of fraudulent votes. And then he said they cheated in 2020 and they stormed the Capitol. And then he just maintained that belief and it didn't hurt him. And he's just always said that 2020 was fake. And like it's impossible to imagine Gavin Newsom standing up and saying, that Donald Trump just, Elon Musk bought the election with fake Starlink votes. We all know that's not going to happen. We all know the Democrats are the adults in the room. Like,
do we?
Can we admit that?
No.
I will bet. I mean, can we make a bet?
Jeremiah on this one? I don't think any of them are going to behave like Trump did.
I will bet you my net worth. I will leverage my net worth that no major Democrat will run in 2028 on fraudulent election
now we're going to get
claims.
into the question of if we were to have a bet, right? What my point is that yes, of the names that you've mentioned and the names that are being pulled for right now, Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, JB Pritzker, the people that are in there, or Kamala Harris herself, I don't believe that they will do it. Now, do I believe that there might be somebody who would run over them because they are able to harness the energy of a base that is very animated about something? Yeah. Do I think that somebody might shade toward that or to give energy toward it to unite a very, very passionate portion of the current Democratic coalition? Yeah. The only thing that matters in politics is getting over the line and harnessing people that are extraordinarily passionate. And that's one thing that the Democrats have had a problem with, is legitimately connecting with grassroots voters that they don't already speak to. And so if you have a group of people that are extraordinarily passionate, then they will be spoken to by somebody. Whether or not they're going to come out and say, Elon stole the election with Starlink is a different thing. But do I believe that Democrats intrinsically, because of their beliefs or their party, are above that kind of coalition building? No, I quite frankly don't believe that they are.
Well, and like the reason that I think that this works on people, or could work on people on both sides, is because our elections do have legitimate problems that no one seems to be wanting to solve. Going right back to the George W. Bush administration, the fact that we have states in this country, at least 6 of them still, that allow machine voting with no paper receipt, that's a problem. It makes people distrust the process. The fact that I moved out of California in 2021 and just found out that I've still been getting ballots the whole time. Like, they never actually took me off the voter rolls. Now, I haven't been recorded as voting. No one actually used my ballot, but they could. And it's like, that makes people, like, those anecdotes make you go like, there's room for fraud here. And even though I was a California poll worker, I do trust the process. Not everybody has served on the inside and understands what they do to check these things. So it's like, I do think we need some basic election reforms. At the very least, every single vote needs some kind of receipt that can be hand counted. And until we get those, it's in those questions where people, regardless of what party they're in or, tribal with, they can look at that and be like, I could see wiggle room here. I could see a path for me to commit fraud. I'm not doing it, but I could see how I could. And I think in that vacuum is where you get people who are concerned to the point where they'll be like, well, my candidate lost and it had to be the fraud. I think that's a huge problem, no matter who's in office.
Yeah, I mean, there's a problem that Democrats have. And the problem is that Democrats are often judged by people like us, by the podcasters and the media and the chattering class and all that. They're judged by their craziest members. Somebody says that Sydney Sweeney's jeans ad is a anti-white is racist. It's pro-white eugenics, and no actual Democrat anywhere in the country, no elected official has said that. But it's like a thing that the president is now talking about because you pull up some crazy person on Twitter and you make it a story. And so the Democrats are judged by the standard of like, will any Democrat anywhere ever like say something about like Elon Musk is doing the blah, 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 stealing the election. Whereas it's hard to even get people to judge the Republicans by what Donald Trump has factually done, like on live television. He sending people to storm the Capitol because the election was fake. And like we're somehow equating those two things, that maybe there's a Democrat on Blue Sky that's going to be mad about Elon Musk. Like that's a real problem for the Democratic Party. And I don't know how they get out of it. But like it's something that this chattering class that we're a part of does a lot, I think.
Do you think that Democrats are unfairly portrayed?
I mean, like the Sydney Sweeney story is a great example. If you can find a single congressional or state level Democrat who has said anything about the Sydney Sweeney controversy, that her ad was promoting eugenics or whatever, like, then I would applaud you, because I haven't found anyone. It's like three people on Blue Sky.
Why is that the burden of proof and not like MSNBC, which did write about it and is very influential in liberal politics?
Well, again, that's the chattering, the media, us, the podcasters, the TV show people, the people who write for the New York Times. They all love to zoom in on like, here's something crazy that somebody said on Blue Sky, and it blows up into a national story, when Democrats, the actual people that we've elected, are doing none of this. But again, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are now beating the Sydney Sweeney drum and claiming her for MAGA. I'm not sure that she wants to be claimed, but like it's a repeated pattern if you look at this, that like Democrats are judged by their craziest members.
So are the Republicans, though. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene is a star. She went from being some backbencher, brand new congresswoman to now, like, we know every single thing that she says. Same with Trump. It was just like, oh,
you know
look
how
at
much
this
her
crazy
son
guy.
bench presses.
Yeah,
That's
it's just like we don't highlight the Republicans that are relatively sane. Like Susan Collins is not a star, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is, Trump is. And I think the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is that the Republicans went like, well, let's go with our stars. I don't care if they're fucking crazy. Where what the Democrats have done is they've shut down the Bernie Sanders. They try and shut down AOC. They try and shut down their stars and make us stick with Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries. So I think like it's a different strategy, but we do the same as the media. Like we go for the extreme people because they're more fun to talk about. So I don't think that I don't think the Democrats are victims of that any more than the Republicans are. They just handle it differently.
Yeah. The Sweeney thing is interesting because Jeremiah, to your point, there has been no elected official that I have seen that has mentioned anything about whether or not Sydney Sweeney's tits are racist. But I do think that it was something that I saw a lot of dialogue on in liberal spaces online that was legitimately like aghast that this ad was racist. There is no doubt that the liberal side, at least from the commentary that I saw, is leery of her, either as some kind of avatar for the MAGA right, or that she has a conservative family herself and therefore is dog whistling to the MAGA right. And now obviously there's more of a connection to it as this story has gotten bigger. I don't think that that's overblown, but you're right. I have not seen anybody on the left say, this is our issue. Finally, we will plant our flag against Sydney Sweeney, and that is going to bring us to, Valhalla in the midterms and in 28. But then again, I would say that that's probably just smart by their part, because who wants to be against Sydney Sweeney's boobs?
Yeah, and I mean the whole thing is very silly because, like, there's again, this is always some tiny minority of like insane people on Blue Sky and Twitter and Tumblr and these left-leaning websites who want to make Sydney Sweeney a Nazi because it's great for engagement. You get a lot of online clout for like starting a fight like this, when like it frustrates me because they want her to be a Nazi and they're ignoring the actual Nazis in the room. Like there are genuine like Nazi things happening. There are there's a Republican running for governor of California who just took a selfie outside of Auschwitz and said, "This is my 0% unemployment plan."
Ew.
That's a real thing that happened. This is a guy running for governor of California. And again, imagine if a Democrat did that. Imagine when I'm talking about the two standards that they're held to, Greg Gutfeld has a show with, I don't know, gets 4 million viewers an episode or whatever. It's the #1 political comedy show on television. And he just had a whole segment about a week ago about how we should rehabilitate the term Nazi. And there's, come on, and yeah, he's making a joke, but he's doing a whole segment about
we can't
Nazi
go to Gutfeld.
please.
We can't go to Gutfeld if we're discounting the media side of it. Although I do think that a guy running for governor is not an elected official. That is a guy who's filed paperwork.
I remember when Gary Coleman, who was a security guard at the mall, decided to run for governor of California. That was fun.
Was it Mary Carey? Was she the porn star that ran for governor of California?
Yeah.
There were a lot of people running all at once. In the wake of Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was like,
I think this might have been during
anybody,
the Schwarzenegger recall.
Yeah,
that Mary Carey.
Just anybody can be governor, I guess, if Arnold can be. So,
I mean, kind of, yeah.
I mean, it turns out he was the last Republican to do it, right? I don't know if any Republican will be governor of California after the governor. Man, this segment had legs. We went from Bill to QAnon to Arnold. A little Mary Carey cameo. Love to see it. Patreon.com/where not wrong is where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this program. This week, we're going to do our silly segment on the Patreon. So we got 2 politics segments in the main show, but we have our silly one, and that is there's been no song of the summer. If you've had a gaping hole in your social existence this summer, during your vacations to beaches and lakes and various different ABBA museums, then it's because you didn't have a song of the summer. And we're going to discuss whether or not that is a sign that indeed the American empire is falling. Join us on Patreon, patreon.com/where not wrong. Let's talk about the ever newsworthy president of the United States. Last Friday, President Trump abruptly dismissed Erica McAntifer, the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, after a July jobs report not only revealed only 73,000 new jobs, bad number, not necessarily the worst. Here was the big thing: downward revisions of over 250,000 jobs that happened the few months prior. Trump claimed that the BLS data was politically manipulated, calling the agency rigged and accusing McAntifer of falsifying numbers to undermine his administration. His economic team defended the move, criticizing data revision practices and low survey response rates. Critics, including former officials and economists such as former BLS Commissioner Robert Beach, who was put in there by Trump, by the way, and ex-Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, both warned that firing erodes the agency's independence and credibility, potentially destabilizing investor trust and economic forecasts. Jen, I don't think that we're going to get a lot of opinions that Donald Trump was justified in firing her, so I will skip to this question. Is this a sign that Donald Trump is materially worried about the state of his economy?
I think, based on watching Donald Trump all these years, that he is worried about our perception of the economy. I think he probably does believe in some way that the numbers were rigged against him, because he does seem pathologically confident that everything he does is right and is supposed to work out great. And if the numbers don't back that up, they're wrong. And so I think that is why she got fired. That's why he said she got fired, because he believed the numbers were rigged. And the White House spokespeople are going on the Sunday shows and trying to kind of be like, well, those revisions, that means that they're not doing their jobs correctly, even those revisions. That's a common thing that happens. Like, from what I understand, the reporting on these numbers is tough to get in real time. Yeah. So they do these revisions because, like, you can get a non-response from a business, and the non-response could be because the business shut down. And so that would revise your numbers. So stuff like that happens. And we are in especially economic chaotic times with all of these tariffs. What I want to point out, though, after reading The Big Beautiful Bill, this fits a pattern that isn't just with Trump. I mean, Trump did this in another way. So it's like what the Republicans do, and I have seen this for years, is that if they don't like the facts, they will change or hide the numbers to have whatever it is match their ideology. So like this week, it's been reported that scientists at NASA have been instructed by the Trump administration to create plans to destroy 2 relatively new satellites. They are nowhere near the end of their life cycle. One of them is standalone and one is attached to the International Space Station. But these satellites are designed to measure carbon dioxide on Earth. And then I just got finished reading The Big Beautiful Bill, and this took me, it's not even all the examples, it was just the low-hanging fruit, but like they took back millions of dollars that was being used to pay fossil fuel corporations to monitor their methane emissions. They took back funding to standardize a process for corporate greenhouse gas reporting. They took back funding to collect data on the impacts of pollution and temperature rise. And they took back funding to test the public health effects of fuels and fuel additives. And this is what you do when you want to help the fossil fuel industry and want to hide the damage that they do. And so what I'm seeing is a pattern where Donald Trump doesn't like the economic numbers. And so he wants someone in place, maybe, that will put out numbers that make him look good. Now, the reason that I want to emphasize maybe is we don't know who the replacement is. So if he replaces this person with another bean counter who has been there forever and is well respected, the damage could be minimized. My concern is that the damage might already be done by this firing because the consequences are all about trust. You know, like we need the world to be able to trust our economic numbers, because if the world thinks that our numbers are artificially positive to please Trump, they're going to be hesitant to keep buying our debt without more interest to cover the extra risk. And we're at a point now where, you know, the debt is just out of control. It's been out of control for a while. The Republicans just added like $4 trillion to it. We're already paying $1 trillion a year in interest. So if we get to the point that they don't trust our numbers and they're charging so much in interest, or even worse, they don't trust us and they're just like, nah, we're not going to buy your debt anymore, that could lead to a major financial crisis here in the United States. So my concern is reputationally in the world what this could do. Like, I'm going to be watching to see who he replaces this person with. If it's Peter Navarro, we're fucked. But if it's someone who's been there forever, like it could be okay. But just the idea that he would come out and be like, these numbers were rigged, I'm replacing the person, I'm holding responsible for it. It's just another reason to think that you can't trust what the Trump administration is doing, even though the numbers up until now, there's no reason to think that they've been wrong. It's what happens here on forward. And yeah, it's a major concern, I think.
Jen, the deficit hawk. Heaton got a boner and he doesn't even know why. Jeremiah, what do you think?
I mean, I feel like I've been vindicated in the earlier things that we were talking about where, you know, the core of the Republican Party is conspiratorial and they're just going to complain that everything they don't like is rigged. You know, it's another great example of that. And what's interesting to me is not that Donald Trump did this, because Donald Trump does this for everything. You know, everybody who says anything against him is a liar and a fraud and a fake and a loser. And any piece of data that shows anything bad about his administration is fake and rigged, fake news. It's made up. It's partisan. Like he does this for everything. It's his only play is to just double, triple, quadruple down all the time, never admit fault. That's not new or unusual. It sucks. It's terrible for the Republic, but that is who he is. What's interesting is the way that a bunch of Republicans who have never thought about the Bureau of Labor Statistics for more than 30 seconds in their life have now all of a sudden developed really, really strong opinions about the nature of revisions of the job reports and have very serious concerns about the blah, 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 blah. Like, I have been following the All In podcast bros from the tech right, your Chamath, whatever his last name is, your Jason,
David Sachs,
David Sachs,
Jason
David
Calacanis.
Sachs all of a sudden has very strong opinions about the nature of revisions and this is unacceptable. And Chamath is talking about stuff that Chamath has never thought about this for more than 15 seconds. But because Trump says jump, he jumps. The right is tribal, and so they follow the leader more than they actually have strong opinions on anything.
They're pretty recent additions to the right, the all-in people.
Yeah, and I do have to say, I do think they do have some positions they stick with, because since I've been doing
David Sachs is in the administration. So I think that David Sachs is he is somebody that is going to toe the line if he wants to stay on the team. Chamath, I do not listen to the show, so you would have more of a sense of this, Jeremiah, than I would. But they are newer elements of that addition, and one of the wings of that coalition that seemingly I do think would be meaningfully eroded by the defenestration of Elon Musk from that particular side of the MAGA ecosystem.
Yeah. This kind of gets me in particular because I come from an econ background. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who work in these kind of federal bureaucracies, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics has such a high standard. They do such an amazing, incredible job doing the work that they do. They are far better, far more reliable, far higher quality than, number one, they get credit for in the public. They're also much better than their European counterparts, their British counterparts, the Japanese version of this. They are the gold standard for what they do. And the economists who work there are so incredibly thoughtful. And you can go online and read every single thing of documentation. It's very explicitly documented. Here's exactly what we do. Here's why we do it. Here's the rationale behind it. If you're confused, here's an explainer. Here's a common question that people all of this is extensively documented. And I know all the people who are in there documenting it it's just wild to just watch that kind of incredibly careful work be tossed out the window with it's fake news. And then, all the Republican senators and all the Republican podcast bros and members of the House of Representatives and governors are now jumping to say that the BLS is biased and rigged. And it's just a sad state of affairs that's how the Republican Party operates now, that Donald Trump gets a bee up his ass about some particular topic and everybody falls in line.
Well, and what's funny about it is that because these ding-dongs are doing that, we're looking at the numbers. No matter what the numbers were, this is something that the CNBC crowd, they'll pay attention to them. But I don't look at the numbers. It doesn't matter that they were revised. I never would have noticed if Trump didn't fire this person and then the right wing have their freakouts. I don't think we would even be talking about it today if it wasn't for that overreaction. So if they really wanted to hide that the numbers were bad, just shut up about it.
This was seized on by a political point by the left because, and I think rightly.
But we'd forget about it in 30 seconds. No, Congress going to subpoena everyone for the Epstein files, and we have moved on.
I don't think so. Honestly, if the Democrats are doing their job, and I think that they have swung at some really fucking stupid pitches since the Trump administration came in. But this is the one they should swing at. When you see downward revisions, when you see an economy that is owned by Trump because of what he's done on tariffs, and if there is a hiring slowdown or there is a meaningful downturn in the economy, then it is fucking malpractice by Democrats to not exclude, in every gory detail, go through, this is when you remember the economy going bad, and we're going to make sure that you continue to believe that it's going bad from every month from now until the midterms. That's what they should do. And they were doing it. And I think my theory on why this lady got fired, 2 words. Donald Trump asked what this was, who runs this, and then Biden appointee got said. And at that point, she was fucking out because she got appointed last year. He's like, fuck this lady. The economy was terrible during the election and she wouldn't say it. Fuck her. She's out. I think it's rash. What was amazing about this entire process is that the Trump 2.0 ecosystem, largely crafted by his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and a bunch of people that I think the intervening period from 2016 on, there are competent political operators in the MAGA world now. When those numbers came out, you saw people like J.D. Vance pushing out a certain narrative. Look at all the American-born jobs that have been created. All these revisions are overwhelmingly foreign-born jobs, likely many of them illegal. This is what happens when you dramatically change our economy. Yes, it's painful, but you can't rip off a Band-Aid without leaving a few hairs in the tape. So that's just what this is. And that was the message that everybody was talking about. And then all of a sudden Trump is like, fuck this lady, get her the fuck out of here on a catapult. And everyone's like, humana. I guess BLS is fake. I guess she's fucking it up. I don't know. But to your point, Jeremiah, I didn't know.
I've got one correction for you.
Go ahead.
Just because the name of the show is We're Not Wrong. So I would never allow you to be wrong without pointing it out. There's what's funny about this. You mentioned like, she was putting out the numbers last year that wasn't acknowledging how bad the economy was. That was jobs
Trump's
report
opinion.
The jobs report that came out right before the election, like the jobs report for October that was released right at the beginning of November, was like a terrible jobs report. It was like 12,000 jobs added or something. And that was like the week before the election. And it's the same lady.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not suggesting that Donald Trump's opinion on this is correct. But
there's no evidence to support anything he's saying. Let's make that crystal clear.
I think she got fired for 2 words: Biden appointee. I think that's all he needed to. That's all he needed to see was Biden appointee, and that's it. She's out. It's going to be a Trump appointee going forward. But to that point, and Jen's point that we're going to be able to see what things are going forward. Jeremiah, I was unaware that these reports were as detailed. That would suggest to me that going forward, whoever is running this department down the line, there will be some kind of meaningfully, we'll see a deterioration in the details of the preparation at the very least, right?
I mean, maybe if it happens, we will get a lot of warning, is what I'll say, because the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the head of BLS, is not just allowed to just invent a number and just put it on the page. There's teams of people that go out and they interview thousands and thousands of businesses. They have a very sophisticated method for what they're doing. And so there's whole teams and teams of people that aggregate lots and lots of data and put it together. And so you'd have to get to all of those people doing it in the middle, or the people doing the aggregation and producing the final report. But this is like a very collaborative process. It requires a lot of people. And so they can't just invent something at the top. Now, what they could do is try to start replacing people in the middle of that bureaucracy. They could start pressuring them to use this method, which is not really the right method, but it gets us a better number. Like they could do that. But if they start doing that, I would guess that you're going to hear people talking about like this. There's going to be news like economist at BLS quits and says it's because they wanted me to fake the numbers. So like, that's the kind of thing I would be watching out for, more so than just the head of BLS now gives me a fake number. Like it'll be harder than that.
That was the point made on the Sunday shows by both Larry Summers and William Beach, is that this is the secretary is the top of a very, very tall and wide pyramid of a staff that pushes these numbers up and are peer reviewed within their own organization, and that the secretary's job is to look over, proofread, but like there's no. It would be extraordinarily hard for the secretary, with the granular detail of these reports, go in and just, hit edit and start changing ones to zeros.
Yeah.
All right. On a scale of like 0 to the most shocking firing of Trump's tenures, where did this rank? And what would you say is the most shocking firing of Donald Trump? Because like this one was
mind-
something where I know, Jeremiah, that there were plenty of voices out there in the MAGA ecosystem and the broader Trump positive ecosystem that were foaming at the mouth, backing him up, and there surely were. But like, you know, I saw enough people that I was like, all right, this is not a universal thing, even in the pro-Trump ecosystem, that people were like, this is a little weird. So it's like, I would put it at least somewhere above a 5 on a 1 to 10 scale. But Jen, what would you say?
I mean, I'm getting kind of numb to being shocked by stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see this news, and even though if this was 20 years ago and you see a president firing someone because they don't like the numbers, it would be like, oh, scandal. But in Trump world, like, this is just another day. So I don't know what scale to measure it on. Do I measure it on a Trump scale, or do I measure it on a normal human being scale? And Trump scale, it's like a 2. Normal human being, it should be an 8. But like, we're in Trump times. So
yeah, I was going to say something almost exactly similar to that, Jen, where like in a normal administration, this would be a 9 out of 10, like really, really bad red flag. With Trump, it feels like just another one. And just into your question of who's the most shocking, I honestly was like, I can't keep track of all the people he's fired.
Me
so
too.
just a second ago, I hope everyone will forgive me. I literally just went to ChatGPT and said, like, give me a list
Shocking
of the
Trump
most shocking.
firings.
And so, you know, he purged a bunch of military leaders in early 2025, a bunch of generals and admirals and Air Force generals. So like military purge, maybe the most petty thing that he's done is he fired the Librarian of Congress for basically nobody can even tell why he did it, but he fired the Librarian of Congress, which is not a partisan position, which doesn't set policy. I think he just fired her because she was a Biden appointee, I think. But I don't know. There's
those two dreaded words.
Firing the inspectors general in early 2025, firing James Comey as he was investigating the Russia stuff. Like he's just done so much of this.
Comey one aged well, though. I feel like there's been enough with Comey to be like, I don't know. He probably should have gotten the fuck out of there. I would say I don't know what the most shocking would be. I don't think that this is probably the first BLS secretary that got fired for jobs numbers that a president didn't like. The difference is that this president goes on social media and says, I fired this bitch because I didn't like the numbers and she's a liar.
They were rigged.
Normally that stuff is just like, you see enough of these reports and then all of a sudden the president's like, I really think we need new blood. You know, I think we should get somebody else in there.
You know, what's funny is there's some people who are still like, they try to sane wash Donald Trump, right? They don't try to whitewash him, but they try to like interpret him through the lens of like something that makes sense. So there's people out there like Donald Trump should really clarify his thinking about like why he would do such a thing and like what his concerns are. And I'm like, he already clarified it for you. He told you it's because he thinks the numbers are fake. Like, And
I agree with Jen. I think he does think that they are fake. I do think that he believes his narrative, and that is, you know, now the difference is that he better hope. Well, I guess now it's going to be, you know, a choose your own adventure like so many things are in politics. But like, if the numbers are good now, then he'll say, good, we got somebody honest in there and now they're good. And if they're good, the left will be like, well, look, we are now in full fucking fantasy mode because we've magnified BLS, which is, to Beach and Summers' point, it is the agreeable truth that is the biggest.
I just don't know that we're going to take the time to be like, well, what is happening at BLS? Like, are the numbers true? Like, I think people are already deciding based on their politics what the next numbers are going to say. And I think that's the tragedy here. That's why I'm afraid that the damage is already done, regardless of who the replacement is.
I do wonder, it's like, all right, have this happen. How many times, in fact, I should probably look this up. How many times has a BLS secretary been dismissed in the middle of a presidential administration? Because if Biden appointed one in the middle of his term, you would imagine, I mean, I don't know whether or not the other person died or, again, a lot of these things I think probably happen more behind the scenes, or people are suggested to leave they don't usually get defenestrated on social media. In the way that
someone
the current
gets to
president.
resign and be like, I need to spend time with my family. You know, it doesn't look like this.
I mean, presidential power is so great that you can do a lot of things by like, you know, just loudly stating somebody rid me of this meddlesome bishop. It just doesn't usually happen with Trump, where he's like fucking handing the lady her, you know, box to leave himself.
I'm not 100% sure of this. So next episode, if somebody wants to look this up and tell me I'm wrong, they can. But I think this has never happened before. I think there's never been a BLS leader, the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has ever been fired or kind of, you know, dismissed before their term was up. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah, I listened to an episode about, no, it was The Daily, so New York Times, but I listened to that episode about this and they said it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
So
well,
for what that's worth.
Then we will, we'll get the feedback on that. We're Not Wrong Pod at gmail.com is where you can write in that email. We also got a bunch of emails from last week's episode. Speaking about Kamala Harris, who we broke the news that she was not running for governor at the end of our Patreon episode, but obviously that was very, very big news. Someone who wrote in, as someone living in Southern California, I'm relieved that Kamala Harris isn't going to run for governor, but that seems to leave the field pretty open. I'd like to know what Jen thinks about Katie Porter as somebody from Orange County, and if Justin thinks she has a shot. Jen, we'll start with you. You are a noted Porter stan.
I like Katie Porter. From the time I was 6 until 18, I lived in her district in Irvine, California. It was a very Republican district and she won it as a Democrat. So it's like she's proven that she can be sensible enough and moderate enough to win over, you know, voters that were in that district. I like her policies. I like the stuff she thinks, like, I like her. So as far as who I would want to be the governor, I think that would be great. I just think realistically, she's one of the things that helped her win is that she's a single mom with 3 kids, and being a governor and a single mom with 3 kids. I doubt that she would do it right now.
I mean, she's running.
Is she running?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. She's completely off my radar. So since she left Congress, I have not seen anything or heard anything about her. So I don't know. So it's like, yeah, if she's running, great. I like her. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen her since she left Congress. So Justin, you step in with the political chances of Katie Porter.
So the only 2 people that I know for a fact are announced to running, and I'm going to do a GPT search here now, are Katie Porter and Xavier Becerra, who is in the Biden administration.
Wasn't he labor secretary or something?
I think he was HHS secretary.
Oh yeah, maybe. Secretary is something. Go on. Sorry, it doesn't matter.
But shit. This brought up Gavin Newsom facts. I don't know. Here's what I know. I know that there will not be a Republican that will matter in that race. That California's statewide rules are a jungle primary where the top 2, regardless of party, get to run against each other in the general. That will almost assuredly be 2 Democrats. And I think the winner will be the person that the Getty family picks, because that's usually what happens in California.
We'll just say I am a New Yorker. I have very little knowledge of California politics, but I did go to a prediction market, and it's telling me that someone named Eleni Kounalakis is the odds-on favorite to be the next governor, because this person is apparently the current lieutenant governor of California. And this is a name I've never heard before, but that person, Eleni Kounalakis, is number 1, Katie Porter number 2, and then a bunch of, you know, much, much smaller names. Those are the 2 dominant chances, it looks like.
I will say, name recognition wise, Porter wins, because I've never heard that lieutenant governor's name either. I will also say Justin, you win this round. Becerra was the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Hell yeah. Look at that.
Well played,
Biden administration knowledge. Flexing. Let's talk about the EPA, which we brought up last week, covering their harm-finding rescission. Evil Oil Insider writes, hi there, somebody who works for the Oil and Gas Trade Association here, and used to work for Biofuels Trade Association. The proposal to remove the endangerment finding took us completely by surprise. The opinions on what EPA is doing are varied among our membership, with some agreeing with it and others adamantly opposed. You have to remember that oil companies have been investing a lot of capital in projects to reduce emissions or eliminate them, while also diversifying into green technologies. This undermines all of those investments.
That's a really good point. I mean, I think regulatory whiplash, it's not good for anyone. Even if you think you're doing someone favors, you're not. So that's a great point. Thanks for writing in.
Why, writes, why is it that Justin seems to take all politicians at their word? Republicans can say we're doing it because NGOs are wasting money, and he will just trust it without looking at what's actually being affected. This isn't the first example, only the most recent. Well, dear listener, I mean, I was elucidating Lee Zeldin's point, and you know, pushing that forward. I do greatly worry about the influence of NGOs in government in general, although I don't believe that it's just a Republican talking point. I think when you look at cities like San Francisco that are totally controlled by Democratic politics, there is a lot of bloat and sugar high that is sold to its citizenry by saying we are taking problem seriously, insert whatever the problem is. The government's not doing shit. They're paying money to an NGO that may or may not get it fucking done. But in general, and everything that Jen covers in Congress can't actually do anything at all. Congress can spend money on a thing, and then the actual implementation of those solutions is something that we pay way too little attention to. We tend to say, look, X amount of money was spent on it, and then just assume it's actually going to do anything. I do think that a larger magnifying glass on non-governmental organizations is something that can only bring us better actual material gains for what the government spends on things. So that is something that goes beyond Lee Zeldin's point on this particular issue. That is a belief of mine, but that was part of what his argument was.
And let me add to that, because in that conversation, it was me that kind of like shot you down on the NGO thing. I'm actually with Justin when it comes to being concerned about them in general. Mm-hmm. And the example that sticks out to me is foreign policy, because one of the top 5 episodes that remains of Congressional Dish is one I did years and years and years ago about the National Endowment for Democracy. And the way this thing works is that money is appropriated from Congress, goes to the State Department, goes to the National Endowment for Democracy. Then they pass out the money to NGOs. And I followed that rabbit hole. And like the NGOs are kind of involved in the regime changes that they're working on. So it's like they can be used as money funnels to do things in indirect ways that are not actually authorized by Congress, but are somehow funded by Congress. So I think we have to... NGOs can't, like, some of them are wonderful and are saving lives and are doing great things. Some of them are shady as hell. So it's like, like you can't just blanket NGOs good or bad. It doesn't work like that.
This is just my larger problem with whenever we become tribal about types of things, we tend to get ourselves in trouble. Like when we're like, I'm pro-union. It's like some unions, great. They do amazing job for their members. They have pushed the quality of life forward. There are some unions that are fucking corrupt and parasitic and have actively harmed their membership because they're just fucking organizations made of people. They can be run poorly. They can be run well. Same with businesses, same with governments. Like this is not a monolithic thing where just because it is of a certain type of class, it's amazing. What I do worry about when it comes to NGOs is that we don't have a gigantic microscope on it.
No.
We tend to just focus on the appropriations, and that's it. Jeremiah?
I mean, the thing with NGOs is that without getting into any particular NGO or any particular department, I think a lot of this is downstream of the American desire for small government, but not really, because that's a thing that is uniquely American. Is we all say we're for small government, but we still want the government to do a lot of things, but we don't want it to be big while it does those things. It's kind of downstream of this like incomplete libertarianism where we basically want the state to do certain things, but then demand that they not do it. So the solution we've hacked together is the state gives money to other organizations to do the things that, in other countries, in European countries or in Japan or in South Korea, other first world countries, the government would just directly be doing these things itself. It would have state capacity to do a lot of this stuff. We've torn down a lot of our state capacity, and especially at the state and local level, like you mentioned San Francisco. A lot of the problem there is that they've just taken basic city government functions and outsourced them to random NGOs that have no accountability. But it's a uniquely American thing that is kind of poisonous. It would be better if San Francisco, rather than giving money to 1,000 different homelessness NGOs, just ran their own department of the homeless or whatever. And maybe they would screw it up, but it would at least be more democratically accountable, like directly accountable.
Yes.
Rather than this series of intermediate steps or whatever.
And, it's in the name, the broadness. NGO stands for non-governmental organization. Like that's the only tie that binds them is they're not government. So you can't bunch
and
that
yet they
together.
are entirely dependent on government money, right? It's not like McDonald's is an NGO because they sell a popular hamburger. It's just like the People for Homelessness Smiles just gets like $2 billion out of the San Francisco budget to fucking do nothing. And then everybody's like, man, the homelessness problem keeps getting worse. Maybe we should give them more money. I agree with you, Jeremiah. I do think that it is rooted on some level of the American desire to have government be as small and efficient as possible. But I also think it has found more home, in addition to that, in the desire to avoid liability. And so the city will say, well, we don't want to be liable for this problem, but we want to get credit for doing something. So look, we're going to stroke this gigantic check to definitely not my friends. And they're going to do a thing. And then, the insidious part is when it works hand in hand, when the problem doesn't go away, and then you can run on it again and say, we're really going to do something about whatever this problem is.
Well, and even more cynically, I do think it is a way for people who are well connected to just allow more hands to go into the tax money cookie jar. Because it's like you spread it out and you have all these administrators and we don't really keep track of it because it's not government. It's not really watched as closely. And so when you do have someone who's connected at an NGO who gets the tax money, like they get to determine their salaries in a way that you don't if it's a direct government job. So it's.
Oh, by the way, with the EPA thing specifically with the NGOs, one of the big ones that was talked about was an NGO that was on some level created by Stacey Abrams. And I don't know the exact details of it, but it became a big boon on the right that it was like, some ridiculous amount of money that was paid out to this organization. And part of the reason why that became public knowledge was because one of the great scourges of the gay dating community, Project Veritas, had a video of an EPA official. And this, like, Laura, I always feel so bad, especially in like New York and DC, for all the it's always gay dudes that are, in these videos. And this was among the gayest. It was a gay bar where this dude is talking about how they're paying out these NGOs as fast as possible because they don't want the Trump administration to do anything else with the money. And at the bar, they were playing the Witch's Road song from Agatha All Along, the Disney Plus original. And I'm like, man, they are really... What a scourge for the poor, lonely gays of DC that there may or may not be a Project Veritas person asking you all questions about your job. Don't talk about your job until the fourth date. At least get something out of it, guys. But
Justin,
yeah,
what's gayer, that bar or an ABBA museum?
He sent us a picture during this thing. Let's see. Heaton did send us a picture. Maybe he literally, his ears must have been burning, saying, meanwhile, I'm at an ABBA museum in Stockholm. And he's got pictures in the group chat.
I love it.
We are intertwined. We're intertwined, the three of us. Speaking of that, Heaton was right. Jeremiah, I'm gonna get your opinion on this because we were talking about CO2 levels on the EPA episode last week, and we got a couple emails on this. So I'm gonna read them all, and then you're going to be our arbiter. Heaton was right? Mr. Heaton was correct. The United States is not the highest per capita CO2 emitter in the world, and according to the European Commission Emission Database for Atmospheric Research, EDGAR, it ranks only the 16th largest. This is behind other developed economies like Canada and Australia. Canada's 12th, Australia's 15th. It is tiny Palau, which ranks the highest at a whopping 62 tons per person, compared to only 13 tons per American. The United States CO2 emission has been declining rapidly for 2 decades, partly because of our greenhouse gas regulations and green energy deployment, but mainly due to the much maligned fracking industry. Thanks to fracking turning the U.S. into the largest global producer of natural gas, comparatively more expensive coal plants have been supplanted now by much cheaper to operate natural gas-fired turbines, which generate 60% fewer emissions per gigawatt hour compared to coal. Compare that with this next email. Jen and Heaton are right on this particular issue. Digging into the data on CO2 emissions per capita, both Jen and Heaton are technically correct. I add editorially, the best kind of correct, on comparisons between the United States, Canada, and Australia. Let's compare the data from the IEA, the International Energy Agency, the UN agency which tracks greenhouse gas emissions, to EDGAR, the European agency. The IEA measures emissions in terms of tons of CO2 per capita and lists the United States as having a higher per capita emission than Canada and Australia. But EDGAR uses tons of CO2 equivalent per capita and finds that Australia and Canada have higher. Notably, no matter which of the 3 countries technically has the highest per capita emissions, all 3 have very similar numbers, as a much sharper contrast is present between the 3 discussed nations and the EU nations, which have about a half to a third per capita of the United States capita, or Canada and Australia, and the Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which emit 2 to 3 times more CO2 rather than the US, Australia, and Canada. Easy for me to say. Jeremiah, which do you side with? Was Jen's assertion was that the United States was the highest of the developed world. Do you find Heaton right, who disagreed with that, or both Jen and Heaton right, depending on which agency you go with?
I would say that it is not technically correct. I think that, look, I mean, I just feel like splitting straws to be like, well, Australia is technically a little bit higher. The US per capita is among the highest. So, in podcast land, where nothing you say in the second half of a podcast ever really counts, you should never be held accountable for that. I think it's close enough, what is it? Hand grenades, horseshoes, and podcasts. All you have to be is close enough, but I would also say it's important, it's interesting, and it's important, and it's relevant that the United States economy is declining in how much carbon we use. The economy is growing year over year. This is not happening because the economy is bad. We are growing the economy while actively every single year using less carbon. And we're at the top now, partly just because we're the richest country in the world. A lot of this is just, we use more carbon than Europe because we are much richer than Europe, even on a per capita basis. The average American makes a lot more money than the average German or Italian or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so we use more carbon because of that. But I think it's good to note that that's not a permanent state of affairs. We can grow the economy while using less carbon. I think we should keep doing that. So yeah, I don't know. I'll give it to Heaton on a technicality, but Jen is right in spirit. I don't know.
Jen, you've been humiliated by our guest. What do you have to say to yourself?
It doesn't matter. That was not the point of the conversation. This is a rabbit hole that we were not even trying to go down. No, it wasn't. It was he.
No,
was like,
no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. Put your fucking gun down. I agree with you.
No, the point that I was trying to make is that there is a global project to slow the pace of climate change, and the Republicans are actively sabotaging it. And so, and also just like side note for the other emailer, becoming number one in natural gas is not a good thing because methane increases the rate of change more than carbon dioxide. It just doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long. So that's not a good replacement. The main point that I was trying to make is about leadership in the world. As we are actively sabotaging this project, we are not going to be looked to as the leader of it. And as I'm looking in international media, China is being portrayed as a more reliable leader than us, which, Justin, how about you go to the next email?
Indeed. So about Green China, right? China, and this is all backed with links that this emailer has.
I love all your
in.
links, people. Thank you for all of the links in this batch.
China has been assembling twice as many solar panels as it can sell for years. Sure, China might be the largest quote unquote producer of quote unquote green energy as in assembling, but much of it ends up in landfills. The only purpose of making these products is to keep people employed so they don't complain about not having work. Yay, communism with Chinese characteristics. Important note, installed capacity of green energy does not mean it's actually connected to the grid. It just means that the panels are in place. 62% of China's electricity generation in 2021 came from coal. US is down to 16.2% by comparison. Green China is not a reality. It is propaganda. TLDR, no one should ever put environmental friendliness or green and China in the same sentence. China is destroying the global fish supply. China is exporting its industrial pollution to other countries. China is majorly responsible for the plastic ocean in the Pacific Ocean, or the plastic island in the Pacific Ocean. China's water is not drinkable. China pretty much has killed off all of its wild birds. China's air is unusually toxic. And the list goes on and on and on.
Yes, which is why it's not good that the world is saying that they're better leaders on this than us, and credibly. So that was the point I was trying to make.
I think this is one of those things where all of the above are true. It is true that China is absolutely the world leader in manufacturing solar panels, and that the solar industry would be in a much worse place without them. They are rapidly, I think, also becoming a leader in wind energy. But also, they are still building new coal plants, and they get most of their energy from coal, and they do lots of other horrifying environmental stuff. All of those things are true at the same time. The only thing I would disagree with Jen about is that I do think natural gas is a good thing, just because in its current state, what it is largely displacing is coal. When natural gas is used in America, it's not in place of solar. It's in place of coal from West Virginia, which is much worse on virtually every metric. And it's also being exported to Europe, where it is displacing Russian oil and gas, which is much dirtier.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was one of the weirdest parts of the Biden administration, because they had such a strident position, obviously, against Russia, especially post the Ukraine war, and we had sanctions on it and everything. But they also put LNG bans to Europe that was very, very weird. It was one of those things that, like, I never got around to it, but it was like, God, something doesn't make sense. Like, something doesn't connect on these two things, because you would assume if you were trying to displace Russia as an energy source, we should be fucking subsidizing natural gas to send to Europe.
Well, so I actually don't disagree with you on that, Jeremiah, but I will say that that's kind of backward looking, because when we were doing that transition to natural gas, we were told it was a bridge fuel. And in that capacity, that made sense. So it's like you transition to gas to get us to the wind, solar, geothermal, like the future that was truly renewable, right? In this big, beautiful bill, they are defunding renewable energy and doubling down on fossil fuels and natural gas. So that's why it's like natural gas is not a replacement for fossil fuels. It is a fossil fuel. And that's where I think like this idea that natural gas is somehow good, like we need to stop with that now, because it's not a bridge fuel. They want it to be the fuel, and that is a major problem.
Never said how long the bridge
I think
was.
we're on the same page. Yep.
I agree.
Amen brings us home here. In the same way that the Council of Nicaea standardized several articles of early Christian belief, creating emergent heresies, the IPCC has done the same with climate science, casting any dissenters as heretics. Core to this doctrine are the mainline assertions to three questions. Number one, is it warming? Number two, how much is human activity the cause of warming? Number three, what should we do about it? It is very difficult to answer the first two questions with any rigor leading to actual consensus. It is not enough to look at a string of record highs being set and conclude that this is warming and industrial activity is the cause. Measuring, weighting, and modeling are afflicted with error in human judgment, which is subjective to incentives, like discovering a problem that requires more research funding. The third question is the most interesting, because in that year that William Nordhaus won a Nobel Prize for his economic modeling of climate change, the IPCC released a position paper saying the global temperature should be limited to 1.5 Celsius. Nordhaus's own work showed that it would be better to do nothing than to spend what it would take to accomplish that goal. Yet, he said nothing to counter the assertion because heretics get burned.
So Jeremiah made a face that looked like he smelled a fart, and I'm curious why he made that face.
That was... Is it okay if I just take a giant shit on one of your listeners?
Please
do. We love it.
I was
extraordinarily mean.
Exercise.
I was extraordinarily mean to a listener last week, and they said thank you and just said that they would up their Patreon. So we have found that the economic model is being extraordinarily mean to our listeners. They will reward us by giving us money.
Okay, hold on. I'm pulling it actually up because you emailed this to me. So I'm pulling up this email because it was an amazing exercise in weasel words. It was an amazing exercise in rhetoric that outpaces reality, where core to this doctrine of the mainline assertions, three questions, blah, blah, blah. Number one, is it warming? It's actually very easy to give an answer to that question. That's an extraordinarily easy answer. The answer is yes. And there's a trillion, billion data points that prove it. There is nothing ambiguous about it. Number two, how much of human activity is the cause of warming? Again, it is extremely easy to answer that question. And they do a bunch of weasel words where they say oh, well, the rigor, consensus, weighting and modeling are afflicted with error and human judgment is subject to incentives. And you can say that about anything. You can say that I'm trying to will you build this model to show whether or not the polio vaccine works? But models require choices, and choices are subject to human interpretation. You know what? The polio vaccine still worked. Shut the fuck up. I don't need to I don't need your rhetoric about it. You can just say human choices make everything complicated. But this is actually one of those things that has a very simple answer. Yes. The planet is getting warmer. Yes, it's because humans are spewing a bunch of gases into the atmosphere. This is all very well proven. The margins of the debate are about how much exactly, but those margins do not include zero. The margins are, it's a moderate amount or it's a lot, is essentially where the debate is. So I don't know, this a very weaselly question with lots of big phrases to try to make it seem muddled where it is not.
I mean, to be fair, the listener did email them that the most important and interesting question was number three. So even if we agree on, let me take that one.
Yeah. So I have been told by people who don't believe climate change is real about William Nordhaus before. And so I know that the assertion that he concluded that we should do nothing is just wrong. It's just wrong. He considered climate change a serious problem, which is why he worked to find an economically feasible solution to it. And he landed on a carbon tax as an efficient economic solution. He actually argued that doing nothing would lead to environmental and economic harm in the long term. So his work is just being twisted by people. And whoever told you that he said this, that's a source that I suggest you no longer trust because you are being misled. I also know that question number one is an absolute yes. The climate is warming. I have read multiple books about this. And then are humans doing it? You just have to look at the rate of change and the CO2 graphs and where the CO2 is coming from. And it is the burning of fossil fuels. I mean, it's not in doubt anymore. And emails like this just make me think that you're being lied to, my friend. So throw away your sources. They're bad.
Well, let me.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Justin?
Go ahead.
And I'll make this quick. The one thing, there's the framing of like in this question, how much should we pay basically, to accomplish the goal of limiting warming to 1.5 or limiting it to 2 or whatever. I think that framing is sometimes out of date. Like there are going to be costs along the way, but a lot of the solutions are going to pay for themselves, like solar energy. Solar at this point is just cheaper than any other form of energy. It has rapidly become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It's 99% less expensive than it was 15 years ago or something like that, maybe like 97. It continues to decrease in cost like 8% a year. Like the cost curve on solar at this point, it is just pure economics for why we're all going to convert to solar energy over the next 15 to 20 years, with climate change having nothing to do with it. So, there are other areas, agriculture and construction, and how do we make steel and cement without carbon emissions? Like those are technical challenges we're going to have to, invest in to solve. But like some of this is actually going to pay for itself. And the whole framing of like, oh, we've got to sacrifice to build a solar energy future is totally wrong. Solar is the future purely based on economics.
But if that's the case, then you don't really need government intervention, right?
Well, my husband, as we know, is a utility scale solar engineer, and they're dealing with I know, there's a drinking game, get shit-faced people. But Jeremiah doesn't know this.
No.
And our July has been really hard here in the Briney household, to be honest with you. The big, beautiful bill has fucked up our lives because I've had to read it, and he's dealing with the repercussions of it, which is that they've yanked the solar credits away from them. So all of the financials of their products or of their projects that are in the pipeline are getting all messed up. And so I've asked him, like, how concerned are you? And he's like, we're going to be okay. The bigger issue is they're trying to make it more expensive by forcing every single part of the solar panels to be sourced in the United States. Yeah. And that's a lot harder because, as we've discussed before, most of the solar panels come from China. And there's like 2 companies that make solar panels here in the United States. So they're now starting to pull monopoly shit. So like if you want panels from one of them, you have to use their shitty construction company. So it's like, that is what's going to hurt the industry. But the financials of solar, like those are fine. The industry is going to figure it out, even if they have to do it without the tax credits, because at this moment in time, the financials are working out, and they're not afraid that we're going to go back to fossil fuels. They're just going to make solar harder in the near future. But like, he's not worried. This isn't an existential problem for the solar industry in a way it would have been 10 years ago.
Well, that is great. That is very, very, very good news. That the private sector has a robust reaction to it. Only thing I'll say is that one of the things that I hate the most about any kind of scientific discussion when it crosses into the world of politics is that politics is an emotional, hyperbolic world. That's the very nature of it. The point of politics is to get people into a booth to hit your button. You do that by playing to their most animatable emotions. You paint your enemies as awful human beings. That's just what happens. Science should not be that. Mm-hmm. Science should always have room for even the fucking most rudimentary dissenter, because science gets stronger every time somebody challenges an assertion. And that very often the most revelatory scientific explorations happen by way of somebody challenging somebody that everybody knows the science is settled on. I'm not saying that that is happening here, but broadly speaking, when it comes to any kind of scientific discussion, it always bums me out whenever it crosses into a political realm, because the tribal nature of it is, I don't think great. And we should, especially when things are very important, like vaccines, like climate change, we should always have room for skepticism. We should be building in room amongst ourselves when we humans, citizens, are talking about it, because unless it is about a specific political issue, we should always, my point of view is we should always have a time for these kinds of dissenting views. That's just my opinion.
I agree with that completely, but when it does come to this issue, there has been a decades-long industry-funded effort to sow doubt on a level that like just isn't justified by the science. And I think that is my concern here, that like it's worked with some people because it's not actual questioning of the science. It's purposeful bullshit. And so that's what I'm concerned about. And I also think that I don't want to be that person that's like, the science is settled, because like, Jeremy, I acknowledge like there's questions about the levels that our emissions are contributing to it. And there's definitely questions about predictions of the future are really, really hard.
Climate hysterics has been a major fucking problem. And
it has been a problem. But
that's the thing, is that you can't
industry funded bullshit.
Sure. But this is, you can't have one, you can't not acknowledge that side of it. And
I did acknowledge. I said I agree with you. So I agree with you.
I'm not saying you. I'm just saying in general. I'm saying that this issue, when we talk about it writ large, is, again, this is where we cross into this political lens of like, the other side can't get any purchase here or else it'll grow and it'll be a problem. And when we're in the political world, which is information warfare, I understand it. When we're in an issue that we're literally talking about life and death, which we are on very important issues like climate change and vaccines, you have to, have room for reasonable dissent, because otherwise you begin to lose credibility. And I do think that there are elements of the interventionist climate change side that have been hurt by hysterical arguments that have had deadlines that have come and gone.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think it's so important to check your sources, and why when I look at sources, it's like, if this person has been caught in a straight up lie and yet is still saying these things, like dismiss that source. And the idea that William Norhaus was saying that like we should do nothing and that would be better economically, that is why I think it's important that wherever this writer got that from, do not trust that source again, because they have led you astray. So I think that's the kind of due diligence that we have to do when we talk about these things, is find out who's trustworthy and who isn't.
Do you find Al Gore trustworthy?
He's not a scientist. So
okay. He's been a big voice on this.
He has, but what Al Gore has done, which I thought was helpful in making an inconvenient truth, he turned, I didn't even know this was a problem before that movie. So that was helpful to me just in raising awareness. And in congressional testimony, that's where I was introduced to James Hansen, who is an actual legit climate scientist. And so it was his books that convinced me of the science. So it's like, there's a rabbit. You can look at Al Gore's work and just be like, you're not a scientist, but introduce me to the people you're listening to. And if I find them credible, I will listen to them. And that was kind of the progression for me.
Does it bother you that claims made in that documentary include deadlines that have come and gone without the results that he was warning about?
I don't hold people to predictions of the future. That's why on this show, when you're just like, Jen, what do you think is going to happen in the future? I tend to want to tell you to fuck off, because I don't think it's a useful use of our time. I think looking at the past, like I am more convinced by the graphs of the change in the last like 50,000 years. Those are convincing to me more than telling me what's going to happen 10 years from now, because you don't know. Like you couldn't have told me that that just west of Austin was going to be underwater 4 weeks ago. Like, we don't know these things. That could be connected to climate. Like, you can't predict those things that exactly, but you can look at the future and be like, or look at the past and be like, this is an obvious trend. So those are the things that I look at more than predictions of the future. I'm not going to hold those against people.
Okay. Let's talk about the 80s. A lot of 80s people died. We had some emails about it. 80s defender logging on writes, I need to set the record straight here. I lived through the 80s, and your version of events couldn't be further from the truth. AIDS? We absolutely knew about it. It was everywhere on the news, in our classroom, and a central topic in my senior year PIWA class, Public Issues and World Affairs. We weren't blind to it, and we weren't ignorant. As for being racist, homophobic, and transphobic, come on. We celebrated the very people that you're suggesting we rejected. We helped make them icons. Freddie Mercury, bisexual and died of AIDS. George Michael, bisexual. Rob Halford, gay. Pete Burns and Boy George, gender non-conforming long before people had any vocabulary for it. Prince, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, all black artists who dominated the charts and were loved across every line. In the 80s, we did not care about the color of your skin, who you loved, or how you dressed. We cared about the music, the energy, and the good times. We were too busy dancing under the threat of nuclear annihilation to judge anyone for being themselves.
Jeremiah.
Okay,
Why
so
does
I'm
this make
gonna
you laugh?
I'm gonna take a giant shit on the second listener here,
Mhm.
and I would love to know what the fuck you're talking about, because yeah, you can say like Boy George existed, but you know what Boy George never actually came out and said was I'm gay, like I am a man who wants to have gay sex with lots of other men, and like even a decade later, even into the 90s, you couldn't be gay on television. Like Ellen DeGeneres lost her television show the decade after we're talking about because she came out as gay. Like this is the decade that founded the moral majority. What the hell are you talking about? Like we didn't care about whether you were gay or not in the 1980s just because Prince wore flashy outfits. Like that's the most absurd nonsense that I've ever heard. And like with regards to the racism thing, again, like, oh, so Michael Jackson was popular, so racism didn't exist. You know, there were still like hundreds of school districts in the 1980s under federal supervision because they had not desegregated yet. And oh, we didn't pay attention to the color of people's skin. Like, have you asked your black friends about that? Like, am I crazy here? Like, there's the actual systemic racism had not even yet been eradicated from society. We still had segregated school districts. And you're talking about like, well, Michael Jackson had the Thriller, guys, come on, Thriller. Like, like that's an argument.
Good. It's a great album. Yeah, I mean, this gets into the question of like, what is the line of culture? Like when we talk about like, was the blank, was the 80s racist? Was the 80s homophobic? It's like, it's so hard to ask because on one level, it's like, yes, did Boy George come out? No, not according to ChatGPT until his autobiography in 1995. When he was at his peak, he did not. Would it have materially hurt his career had he? Almost undoubtedly. Same thing with everybody else that you talked about. Were they icons for burgeoning gay America that went on to have a tremendous success? Would they be a huge, would culture have moved in the direction that it wound up doing if they didn't have mainstream success that was created largely by institutions like MTV? You can make an argument that no, that they were helpful to understand a different kind of lifestyle, even if they did not say. So it's like, I don't know. It's always so hard for me to put a black and white label on, you know, something like were the 80s racist or homophobic or, you know, transphobic, because it's like, well, you kind of got to judge it by the era of its time. Were they less of those things than their previous generation? I think assuredly. Yeah. Were they as accepting as the 90s or the 2000s or the 2010s? No, but also that's kind of the linear nature of progress, right?
Well, the 80s gave us important stepping stones to acceptance. And I think these people are excellent examples of that. You know, like I do think that people who weren't accepting of Black people became more accepting of Black people when they fell in love with Whitney Houston and the Jackson family and you know, Boy George and Prince. And I think that it's helpful. But you can't look at the 80s and not look at the systemic, like in the 1980s, it was legal in most places to fire someone for being gay. It was the 1980s where they declared the war on drugs, and that led to the mass imprisonment of Black people because crack was severely sentenced in a way that was much harsher than Wall Street's preference of cocaine. Like those are systemic things, and we're just getting around to fixing that last one now. So it's like, there are stepping stones to progress, but let's not rewrite the 80s as in, you know, everybody loved each other and there was no racism and we didn't care about the color of your skin. We absolutely cared about the color of people's skin. We still have those issues now. So by saying we didn't have them in the 80s, you're also denying that we have them now. And it's just, it rings as really
problematic.
Yes, great word for it.
There we go. Gen Z nostalgia trend writes, as a Gen Z listener, it was funny to hear Heaton say, we're getting to the point where we have nostalgia for the 90s because we've been nostalgic for the 90s my whole life. On the internet, I've been seeing people nostalgic for the early 2010s already. That's definitely not mainstream, but 2000s nostalgia is.
Yeah,
I gotta say,
I have it.
Fucking loving it. The fact that like rap music sounds like rap music when I was a kid and Clips are making new albums. This is fucking dope. This is awesome.
Just don't bring back low-rise jeans.
Hell yeah.
I did like Jinkos.
Jinkos are back, by the way. Jinkos are back in a big way, apparently, with the youth. They're into gigantic.
Pants big enough that you can put both legs into one leg.
A Bedouin tent cinched off at the waist. Those are the new trends.
Yeah, they're kind of denim skirts, just as long as you don't bring back low-rise jeans so that like our guts have to be hanging out and that there's no other jeans that we're able to buy. Like, let's keep these Taylor Swift jeans so that, you know, this old lady can keep her fupa in her pants. That's all I ask people.
And finally, had to be there, man. Writes, I think you guys are too young to understand why the 80s were so popular for a lot of us if you grew up in the 70s. The 80s were a time of hope where we were finally getting out of the shit that fucked up during the 70s. It wasn't great, but when your dad can finally get jobs again and you have money, who cares who's in power? Also, Reagan put the final nail in the coffin of the Cold War. One of the things that made me comfortable growing up in the 70s was knowing that made me uncomfortable about growing up in the 70s was knowing that I lived in a primary target area and I wouldn't have to worry when World War III started because I'd be dead of a bomb. You don't understand it if you didn't live it.
I mean, that does seem really scary. And I can't say that I ever had to hide under my desk in a nuclear war drill. It seemed absurd when we learned about it. So I get that.
Yeah. No, we got a pretty sweet little pocket. I don't know how old you are, Jeremiah, but growing up in the 90s, I was in late high school before Columbine, so we weren't even there for the school shooting drills. So it's like, we didn't have to worry about the bomb. We didn't have to worry about the incel. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah, we had earthquake
between
drills
9/11 and the Cold War and that beautiful little time period. I think that the professional political class, whether it's people working in DC or whether it's commentators like us who obsess over all this stuff, we kind of forget a lot that like the median person does not pay attention to this stuff the same way that we do. What most people want is very simple. They want to have a good job. They want to feel stable. They want to have a place to live that they can afford, that they can raise a family in. They want streets to be safe. They want life to be affordable. And pretty much that's it. Like, they're not concerned about that many other things than, do I have a good job? Is my family safe? Do I like my house and my neighborhood? Do I have a community? Is life affordable? Like, if you get the very basic stuff right, then the rest of politics is pretty simple. If you get the basic stuff wrong, and, this is a lot of what Biden was punished for, that, people looked at San Francisco and saw chaos in the streets and public safety is down and the cost of living is up. And if you can't get the basic stuff right, the rest of it won't matter. And so I think this is just reflecting on a time when they felt like the basics were doing pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's societal and individual level.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. Jeremiah, thank you so much for joining us. You get the first plug here today. What is going on in your digital world?
I write a Substack called Infinite Scroll. You can find it at infinitescroll.us, www.infinitescroll.us. It's about the social internet and politics and technology and how social media is changing the world, how it's changing our culture, how we approach politics and all that. I also host the New Liberal podcast and am the founder of the Center for New Liberalism. If you're interested in center-left politics, come give us a look.
All right. Jen, what is sizzling on the congressional dish this week?
I finally got part 1 of the Big Beautiful Bill episode out. So, that's going to be the one that followed up on my warnings about this was the stuff I was concerned when it was the House version. Mm-hmm. And so you'll hear about the updates on those 5 categories in this episode. What made it,
what didn't, what changed, what stayed the same?
The details of all of it. So
there we go.
Yeah, it's a long one, but it is packed. And so if you want to have any conversations about the Big Beautiful Bill, this is part 1 of you actually knowing what you're talking about.
On politics this week, I talk about why the Texas Democrats should be spending more time in my neighborhood and less time in lobby bars in Albany and Chicago. I also have Kirk Beto of National Journal, the Hotline newsletter editor, on because I'm a sicko and I've read every fucking campaign book that came out, and so has he. And so we made our final awards of biggest winners, biggest losers, reputations destroyed and made, all chronicled on the episode that is out right now. And then on Friday's episode, we have two guests, Michael D. Cohen, the man who wrote the book on the modern political campaign, and Tom Merritt, our friend from Daily Tech News Show. We discuss a possible major change in how campaigns can text you that is coming for iOS, for iPhone users, that could overnight eliminate anywhere between $50 to $500 million worth of small dollar fundraising across the political spectrum. What's real? What's going to happen? The fight that is happening right now, and what could be happening going forward. Michael Cohen is somebody who's worked in Republican politics. He knows the actual campaign side of it. Tom, obviously, on the tech side. We walk through all that on Friday's episode. But get them both on Politics, Politics, Politics. That'll wrap it up for us today. For Jeremiah Johnson and Jen Briney, I'm Justin Robert Young. A lot of J's this week. Till next time, we're not wrong. The 80s were.
Dog and Pony Show audio.